Okay, so in this lesson I'm going to go through how to quickly make some cloth in 3ds Max. So I've just got a very short scene set up where I've got 3 barrels and a plane in place that will do for my floor. So to create my cloth, I'm going to start off with a plane and I'm going to drag that into my scene. You'll notice that in my plane I have added in 23 by 23 segments. This is because for a cloth it needs to deform, and the more segments or more edges or polygons or points that you have in your mesh, the better it is going to deform around your other objects. So the whole idea in this cloth is that it's going to fall down and kind of deform around and kind of wrap around my barrels and fall onto the floor as well. So once I've got that made, I can go into my modifier list for this object and I'll just type C and it'll bring me down to the cloth modifier here near the top. So you're going to have these options in here for the cloth modifier. We're just going to kind of focus on the top ones to start off with. So we're going to have object properties and simulate local. Okay, object properties, if I click on that, brings up a display menu where I can click on my plane that I've made. It might be actually a good idea to name these. I'll just name this cloth. And my barrels, I'll not bother naming those. So I've got my cloth here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into choosing that it is a cloth and not inactive. And I'll choose, let's see, I'll choose a flannel preset. Now what I've noticed with 3ds Max is sometimes if you choose that there and press OK and go to object parameters again and click on cloth, sometimes it doesn't hold on to that option and it'll become inactive again. Next thing I'm going to do is, because if I press simulate now, my cloth's just going to fall down. I'll have to reset my stages to bring it back up because it's got no collisions or nothing to collide onto. So if I go into object properties, and if I go to add object, I'll see I've got my plane, which is my floor, and my 3 other cylinders, which are my barrels. So with those selected, I'm just going to go to collision object. So these are now collision objects. And press OK. Again, there is a bug inside 3ds Max that now I've selected these barrels and my plane. You can see that they're set to inactive. So it might be a case of having to go back into object properties and set them as collision objects and press apply. So now I can go to simulate local and you can see that it's actually simulating the cloth, but it's kind of done a horrendous job in the collisions. Part of my cloth has fallen through my barrels. So I'm just going to reset my state again and I'm going to go into object properties. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my 4 collision objects, and you can see here that we've got in the properties for this section, we've got depth and offset. And what we want to do is we kind of want to raise them up higher to a higher number so that the collision with the cloth kind of happens farther away from the vertices, so it doesn't go through them. So I'm going to bring this up to about 3.8 and offset up to 4.4. Press OK, and I'm going to simulate local to see what I have. So that's working far better now. As you can see, it's not having that issue where it's going through my barrels as much. I might just go into object properties again and grab those 3 and just up it just a tiny bit more. Press OK and then simulate local. And it's doing a bit less and I'm okay with that. So there we have our cloth made. Now you might want to go into your modifier list when you've done that and maybe turn on Turbosmooth just to smooth it out and make it look a bit more like cloth. So when I do that, I'll just go back to my cloth here, make sure I've got show end result on, and then I'll simulate local again. And as you can see, it just looks a bit more deformed like cloth. The last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some wind in my scene. So I'm going to go to the create tab. I'm going to go to this space warps, and you can see that there's a wind here. So I'm just going to drag that into my scene, and I'm going to rotate it into position. Now if I was to click on my cloth, go to my modifier and go into cloth here and simulate, it wouldn't actually be affected by the wind just yet. So what I want to do is, I'm just going to rotate a wee bit more. I want to grab my cloth, go into the cloth modifier and then go into cloth forces. And in here I can select whatever forces are in my scene and bring in forces in the scene to forces in simulation, so they'll be part of the simulation. So now if I simulate local, you might be able to see that the cloth is moving a wee bit more. That's just because of the wind. If I click on the wind, I can actually go into the strength of it and I can make that higher. So you can see my cloth moving a bit more. I go a bit higher and it starts to wave out. In the next lesson I'll show you how to go through making a flag, and I'll also show you how to do a pillowcase and bed covers as well.